Yep. You're gonna
All right, hey, hang on. I need to do a share screen. And hopefully you guys are seeing this.
Yes, we are.
See your red shirt.
Just sit back and relax. It runs about 11 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back.
Great job, Howard.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
Well, I
Great
can't,
work,
I
Howard.
don't have a handheld. The only thing I got is a little handheld camera that sits here at my desk. So I can't take you out and show you everything else. What do you have for questions, etc.?
Yeah, the waterfalls that really looks like water. How do you do that?
Most of it's just resin, various colors. The actual dam overflow has got some realistic water on it. Help give them some, just something I played with for quite a while. Let me see. Yeah, glasses.
So Howard, my question was why 1905?
Okay. Are we sharing the screen right now? You can see what I got up on my screen? No.
We're looking at you. You're big and we're a couple of little thumbnails. Hey,
How's that?
Screen sharing.
There you
Should
go.
have should
now
have
we're
the dam
looking
up
at
there.
pics of your layout.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. 1905? Good question. Got started back in the 60s. Model railroader was running an issue on a Canapaw and something or other, which was they were running Kidder moguls and Central Valley cars, and I liked the looks of it. So I got started with that, and that's why I ended up in 1905. If I get later than that, I ended up with trailing trucks, which I did not want. So 1905 was a good place to start. All right, that's all right.
Okay, Howard, now we're back to you on big screen and
Yeah,
I can't see everybody.
okay. There's another view of a stationary view. These are the ones that were sent into the Southerner for publication in the next issue.
So you're
How
gonna
many
be
of
the
them
next
flagging
issue?
out?
All right, we're back to everybody, and I'm just talking away.
How many of the horse and buggy operations you have here?
The last I counted, I was at about 85,
Wow.
and I've got another half dozen more under construction. There'll be 100 by the time the convention opens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Howard, are you familiar with Faribault Mills?
It's very familiar, and it's Faribault, not Bolt,
Yeah.
French.
Well, just for your information, the guy that owned that visited here and actually bought a company over in Westminster and was trying to set it up and went bankrupt.
Faribault Mill still exists in Faribault, Minnesota.
Yep.
They still make blankets and other things. And they're not a cheap blanket either. They actually make original Army blankets from back World War II time frame. Same design, same material. So Faribault Mill's been one of those places I've known about since I was knee-high to the grasshopper.
Well, Mike Harris, who was the president at the time, visited this region a number of times.
Oh, that's nice to know. All right.
I had trouble.
Did I lose you guys?
Oh. We're still here.
All right. What did I do wrong? Oh, okay, there I go.
And how long is your main line? I guess it's not a single main line, but
Yeah, it is. It's point to point, and I have not measured it. It's a couple 100 feet at least. I'll have to measure it.
The Cascade is the central division point on Howard's Railroad. And there are 3 towns north and 3 towns south of that before you get into staging. And the staging, one end is 8 tracks and the other is 6 tracks. So there are through trains that run the whole length of the railroad, and then there are locals that come out from Cascade and go back to Cascade and serve the towns either north or south. And then there are 3 switching districts in the big city of Cascade. So Howard took off his second deck, and he can still handle 8 to 10 operators.
And keep them busy.
Yes, and keep them busy. I've been playing around taking photographs, obviously, for the Southerner magazine. And Bruce is aware of Helicon Focus, but let me pop a couple things up on the screen for you. All right. All right. You see how we got just a little bit of in focus at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
If we all right, so I need to stop sharing that one. Move that one. Share a different one. That's after you take multiple shots at various focus distances. Run it to Helicon focus, and it's sharp from the very back to the very front. I'm surprised I didn't use this years ago. It's a very good program. 30-day free trial, and then you do $30 a year after that for the basic program. If you're shooting model shots, you almost gotta have something like this. All right, I'm back. Still question time.
How many locomotives do you have? I gave up counting when I was over there.
There's at least 40 on the layout, and I've got another 20 hiding up in the corner somewhere. At least 20 more. Someday I'll get them all running, but some of them will be forever.
And how often do you do maintenance on the locomotives? You know, lubricating and, you know, cleaning them out.
Every couple of years. They haven't run for a while and just now starting to get running again. And as Sandy knows, I've got some issues, and we'll keep working at it. We'll get it running good here in the next year because we have to. And for those who have not been here before, you can see my library behind me. But what you don't see is the other half of the library on the other side.
Wow.
And you see the top of the shelves over there. And this first section is double-sided. If you're looking for something in the model railroad area, I may have it, may not. But I have a lot of books, magazines, articles, and oddball stuff nobody else wants.
One of the first places where the water flows over the dam, right early on in your video, there was a bunch of little yellow rectangles, looked like they could be yellow tombstones standing up to the right of the waterfall. What was that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Wheat shocks. I don't know if you're familiar with the old way of binding and then threshing wheat.
Mm-hmm.
The binder went through, gave you a bundle, And then they went through and you shocked it up in multiple bundles in a pile, standing on end, and topped off with one to keep the rain off. That's what you see there is wheat chalk. I need to go through the ground there and make it look like it's cut over wheat. So I haven't, I've got to get the right material to do that.
Howard, was that one area a burned out area?
Yes, as
Very
you
nice.
come around the corner there has definitely been a forest fire.
Okay.
Not too often modeled, just something I decided to do.
Not too often modeled also is your cornfield. That's about the biggest model cornfield I think I've ever seen. How long did it take you to plant all those little corn plants?
That's the easy one. Those are actually from Buford shops, and they come on a string about 3 or 4 inches long, and you plant them all together. And the way I did it is I contoured the ground beforehand, so I didn't have a flat field. And the pieces have got holes in them, so I take little things like sewing pins and pin the whole thing, glue it down, and then pin it down to hold it in place. And then after everything was done, then I came back and sprinkled some dirt to cover the yellowish ground that I then had. But yeah, it's a good product. I have done my own cut corn, but it doesn't look quite as good as this did. And another big field got removed and I pulled down the upper level. So, you saw most of it, but this thing's got more water in it than most other people got. We follow a couple streams. We got the big river. Then we got a few ponds here and there.
Is it all flat, or do you have grades?
There are grades. It may go up about 4 or 5 inches in 40 feet. It's relatively flat, but there are grades, and the grades do affect how long the train will haul. Fortunately, even the Americans will pull the 8 cars I need to run on a local, or the 10 cars I run on my through freights.
So what's your maximum train length? There weren't very long trains in those days.
Well, depending where you were, but they were running 40 and 50 car trains back then. On my railroad, anything over 12 won't fit in my staging tracks. So I try to run 10 cars on my through freights and 8 cars on my locals. My north end staging is longer. It can take longer trains, but why? I got to put the car somewhere.
How many industries have you got, or different, switching destinations?
Yes. For the article, I went out and counted. There's something like 50 different spots or industries to be switched, with 110 spots at those industries. The yard's only got 4 tracks, 8 cars a piece in the track, so it keeps the yard master hopping, trying to figure out how to classify 6 or 7 destinations on 4 tracks. He can do it, just got to double up now and then get people to run trains out of there when he's ready. And I still have another 3 or 4 spots where I can add industries. I got to put a big for lease sign up on a building because it doesn't have anybody occupying it yet. And I got a couple of ground lease places as well. And then Sandy came up with an idea of moving my pickle works down to another town. I'll have to look at that a bit, see if it'll work. But
Taxpayers are going to be angry.
Yeah.
With the pickle works next to a stockyard, yeah, I don't know about that.
How many freight cars do you have on the layout? I know you run a car card system when you operate.
I think I'm all right, somewhere between 200 and 300. I don't remember exactly, but probably close to 300. And I'm going to be adding a few more. I got 4 on the workbench right now being built. Don't have it available. My latest build was, some people would call it a fantasy car, but I really don't think it was. The CNW modeler published a paint diagram for a Racine wagon car for the Chicago Northwestern. There's never been a photograph of it. But if you go back to the same date as the paint diagram with the drawing and look at the equipment registers, there were 10 cars of that length added to the roster at that time. So I think that they had 10 cars painted that way. Now, later on, they added more cars, but this is the only class of cars that was 46 feet long on the Chicago Northwestern. So when they added the first 10, I'm pretty sure that they were Racine wagon cars. It is about the same time as when the Milwaukee did their 10 cars for Racine. So,
Howard, you're the only NMRA Master Model Railroader in the group. And I know you had to do stuff in a lot of different categories to get that designation. What's the favorite part for you?
I enjoy doing rolling stock. I really did, even though it took me a while to get that particular merit awards and stuff. I just kept putting it off. With the convention going on, there's people who should be working on volunteer because they're working on the convention. Sandy, if you keep working all those articles, you might be able to work towards author. You should look at that, see how much else you've got to do. By the time you get through doing all the stuff you intend to do, both for particularly for the Southerner, you might be a third of the way there. But it all takes time, and it all takes documentation. That's the big thing, is to be able to do the paperwork.
Howard, these cars that you're building now, are they with the truss rod underframe?
Yeah, I've got very few that do not have truss rods. I've got a couple that have very early steel underframes, but virtually everything's got truss rods. I've got a couple of New Haven cars, probably Philadelphia and Reading, and some UP stuff and maybe a Santa Fe that got steel underframes. But these things were all built about 04, 05, and I got stuff that was built back in the 1890s and all the way up to 1905.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about the commodities that roll. I know you got a lot of stock pens because I was over there. And I saw that there's stock pens in virtually every town and grain elevators in virtually every town. What else moves on your railroad?
Just about anything that moved. You got to remember, the railroad moved everything back then. So we do a fair amount of LCO. We do dedicated LCO from Cascade, both north and south. And I haven't worked out the LCO local yet, but eventually we'll do some of that. Of course, we do beer. We got a brewery online. And with beer, you gotta have barley, hops, all that good stuff. So we ship that. We've got a broom manufacturer, so we got to get broom corn, which is not the same as field corn. It's an entirely different product. We have something called Embalming Casket Company. It is a real business in Burlington, Iowa. Somewhere I've got photographs of it. So. And then I have Argyle Paint Company, and they do obviously one-coat tweeds.
One
Somebody
code
knows
for
what
the
tweeds
Argyle
look like.
effect.
Somebody knows what tweeds look like. Yeah, most of the rest of it's sort of typical, small town industry type stuff. I try. We have cannery out there because we're obviously in the Midwest, and canning, particularly peas, was a big thing east of Wisconsin, and it's still a big thing in Minnesota, along with corn. And then we get into the smaller specialty items that are packed out there. Corn and peas are big in southern Minnesota today. And from what I can find out, at least in Wisconsin, in my period, the peas were a very big item. Don't know how much they got over into Minnesota at that time.
Howard, I know you do a lot of historical research for your railroad. How many of your towns are modeled after real towns, and how many of them are just totally fictitious?
Put it this way, the town names are real. The contents are fictitious.
Was there ever a railroad going through the towns that you named?
Through most of them, yes. Cascade is about a half a mile west of the railroad. And by my time, the dam had broken down and the flour mill was no longer, I think it burned down. So that's actually before I grew up. That's a mile and a half from the town of Randolph, where the Northwest, which became the Great Western, crossed the east-west line between Mankato and Red Wing, which also became part of the Great Western. And at the same time, there was a Milwaukee Road line that paralleled the east-west line. So we had three railroads in what was Randolph back in the early periods. So, some business there. Going south, Sogan, which is a flour mill, was not on a river. Didn't have much there. It may have had a small flour mill, small water mill type thing. But there's virtually a ghost town today. But Casson is a big town today. Same with Leroy. Leroy had two railroads going through it. Casson had two railroads going to it at one time. So while towns do exist, and a couple of the buildings, or at least building names, exist in those towns, the industries are really fictitious, but they are typical of what we see in a Midwestern town. Same with the track layout. It's basically typical of what you're going to cross.
So some people are prototype modelers, and everything they have, every building, track arrangements, whatever, existed on a prototype. And some people are totally fictitious, and you're somewhere in the middle. You've got a fictitious railroad, but I would call it proto-realistic or fictitio-realistic or something. You've made a real effort to capture a particular area and time, and you do a lot of historical research, but it's all made up.
That's true. The rolling stock, as far as I can tell, is all appropriate for the period, and is all 90% of it's correct, except for my own railroad. All the foreign road stuff as far as I know, is at least 95% correct. And they did exist in my period. Because I go back to the equipment registers to verify that they did exist in 1905. So that's just one of my things I want to. I think I've got one car that's 1907, and I might have one Heinz reefer, which is 1906. If you see a yellow Heinz reefer, it's past my period. They were all painted red in my period.
Howard, this is Mac. I've got to go. I've got to leave, but I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed your tour. You did a great job with it up there. Thank you.
Hey, it's a different way of doing them, Mac. And since I don't have a handheld cell phone that has camera, it's the way I did it.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night. See you next month, Mac, I hope.
Yeah, I'll try to get there.
Jim Reese, we're going to Florida next month.
Travel gets cheaper all the time.
Well,
So Jim, when we go to your railroad, are we all going to have to quarantine before we come back to South Carolina?
I've pretty much stayed. My wife and I have stayed to ourselves down here, so we ought to be pretty safe to be around.
Okay, I don't want to catch anything over the internet, you know.
Yeah, right.
Is there a trick to deciding whether you're going to broadcast a pre-recorded sound with the video, or whether it's coming with, or whether it's just picking up, what you're saying?
okay, I created my whole thing with a program called Open Shot, which is basically a video editor, and multiple clips, titling and sound. It'd be different tracks you can lay in there. If you're recording something with a camera and it has sound with it that you do not want, it allows you to separate the sound off of it. So you can then delete the sound and put in just the sounds that you want. It's a freebie, and it's easy to use. So it's an Open Shot. Take a look at that and see if that will work for you.
How many people do we have on Zoom tonight?
We had 15.
Not bad.
Sandy got looking a whole lot better.
I'm only seeing 4 others of you. So how come we're not seeing all the rest of the 15?
Are you seeing them in a little column down one side?
It's on the top.
If
You got a little arrow on one side?
there's a thing called gallery view where you can see everybody.
Now I've got my iPad on gallery, but I only see 9 photos. One of them being mine.
I see 13.
I see 13, but
And then I've got 2 screens. I've got Howard on another screen.
That's smart.
Yeah, I can turn the video down on it.
Well, gentlemen, unless there's a bunch more questions, I suggest we adjourn and partake in whatever beverage you so desire.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard.
thank you very much, Howard. Next month, we will be in Florida.
Bring your bathing suits.
And we're going to bring our bathing suits, and Jim Reese will show us what he's been working on ever since he left us a couple of years ago and moved down to the land of COVID.
That's it.